I have always appreciated when Far Cry takes chances. We've seen that in their off mainline releases. No, so not just like the main 1, 2, 3 releases, but the DLC. Like Blood Dragon is a really good example of something that was just really out there. Or Primal or New Dawn were not the mainline releases that had some interesting mechanics, whether it be taming animals or some of the other interesting graphical and gameplay elements that we experienced. Okay, so that's cool. And I knew that when Far Cry 6's DLC, at least in the kind of Ultimate Edition that I bought that came with the Steelbook, I knew that they were going to give away the Season 1 content, which was 3 separate DLCs based off of the villains of Far Cry 3, 4, and 5. I knew I'd be in for some sort of treat, but I was kind of burnt out on Far Cry 6. You could check my review on the channel, get my thoughts on it there, but it didn't wow me the way that I wanted it to. So I knew I'd kind of put it aside and I'd get back to it one day. Well, that day's today, so with my DualSense Edge controller in hand, I dived into Far Cry 6's DLC called Insanity, which features Vaas, the main villain from Far Cry 3, in his own, I'm going to call it adventure, but it's a very odd story of kind of some of his inner psyche. I guess before I even get too much into this whole review, I've got to say that Vaas is definitely, in my opinion, the most interesting villain Far Cry has ever had. Probably because he was the first really kind of named villain in the series. But he just had such an interesting arc, and I feel like he was kind of eliminated a little quicker in the story than I would have liked. So it's interesting to go back and get a little bit more of him. They did go back and get the original voice actor, and this is basically done in-engine in Far Cry 6 with the same weapons and gameplay mechanics and everything you would expect. You are in a new map, and obviously you're playing as Vaas this go-around, not Danny. The interesting thing, though, is this is a roguelike. And as far as I can tell, and I know this is the 3rd of the DLCs, so technically this has already been done with the other 2 episodes with Pagan Min and Joseph Seed, but as far as I can tell, this whole like trilogy of games is Far Cry's first genre into roguelikes. And I love this idea. I wish they had taken it way farther than they did, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to say that if you are a fan of Far Cry's mechanics, you're going to just naturally fall in love with this game because it's just more of that. The fact that you're going to hear a ton of new voice lines and bits of pieces of story and kind of like, what was the bad guy thinking sort of things, this is absolutely for you as well. If you're like me and you burnt out on Far Cry a long, long time ago and you're just like, I'm looking for something to play on a lazy Sunday, well, there's clearly no rush for it, hence why this video review is, by all accounts, I believe 2 years late. But I'm getting to it now. I did beat the whole game in one sitting. It took me about 2 hours and 15 minutes. I did die twice very early on. This game is early on punishing, like very punishing. And if you are not ready for that, you're going to die quickly. However, once you kind of get the feel for what you're supposed to do, and you don't do something stupid like me and go to a dungeon right away with a handgun, you may actually find some fun in this experience. So this is a weird psychic realm in which Vaas is consciously aware that he died to the main hero in Far Cry 3, Jason, and you are in some sort of weird purgatory or proving ground to try to not necessarily make amends with what you did, not even really come to terms with it. It's just kind of a way to like talk through it. And if you're a huge Far Cry like story buff and you just love everything about this, there's a lot of lore to sink your teeth into. There's some little side missions and the infamous notes that you'll find that give you more kind of explanation of what's going on. You're going to get stuff like this where you get these snapshots of what was back in time or what could have been back in time, and you're going to get a chance to kind of live through some of that as well. But if you're like me and you're just looking for a fun first-person shooter roguelike game to play, well, you sort of came to the right place. The map is very small, but it's very clear where you need to go to quote-unquote win. There's a lot of stuff on the way for you to do if you want to level up more. As with every roguelike game, death is permanent. So all of the non-permanent upgrades you have unlocked are gone. So the main mission is to find 3 pieces of this dagger to kind of put this ceremonial dagger back together. If, let's say, you get 2 pieces and you die on your way to the 3rd, well, too bad, so sad. You have to go back and get the first 2 again. If you had a ton of money and you hadn't yet had a chance to upgrade permanent unlocks for your character, like a bigger health pool or more weapon slots, well, too bad, so sad. You got to do that again as well. And there are little buffs and boosts that you will get along the way that are just for that run, like an extra life or the ability to run faster, or you'll get more experience for killing enemies or that sort of thing. Those are all very cool, and they do definitely propel the run, but I think the balancing is off here significantly, because once you kind of get through that first initial hurdle and you unlock your first permanent gun, which for me was actually another handgun, this little submachine gun that I'm running around with. It's like a little Uzi. That weapon pretty much carried me until I got a grenade launcher, which then definitely carried me through an assault rifle, and then by that point I was fine. I probably honestly would have been fine with the Uzi and the grenade launcher, to be honest with you. That was definitely enough stuff to kind of like push me through most of the difficult bosses in the game. And because, like an idiot, I went straight for, unknowingly, like one of the harder areas in the game, well, shame on me. I didn't know any better, and ultimately I had to just grind through it. And I think had I done it a little bit better, or the game had given a little bit more direction on kind of how it works and what you're supposed to progress through, probably would have had a little bit better time in the early stages of the game, but that's okay. Again, this being Ubisoft's kind of first foray into roguelike, I understand it, and I'm not picking on them too much. They definitely give you an open world with tons of stuff to see and do. There are different types of challenges that will unlock new guns, new skills, new fast travel points, weapons, money, experience that allows you to kind of beef up your character as much or as little as you think you need to in order to progress into kind of the main story. And then obviously when you finish the game, you're going to get a score and you're going to get a time, and it is kind of incentivized for you to then play it again, to have another loop, so to speak, to carry over with the weapons and stuff you had to make it harder and harder and harder. I doubt many people will actually want to go back and do some of the harder difficulties, only because it's very samey, and all you're really going to get in that second or third loop over is basically just more modifiers to your gun, which honestly the game is totally random on which ones you get. I thought they were very generous, giving me a silencer and a red dot sight on my AK-47. That was all I needed to be stealthy and to see at distance. But you might get some different modifiers that kind of ruin your experience or make you feel like you need to grind a little bit more. But I don't see this being one of those games that you're going to invest tons and tons and tons of time into, because it does get very samey. That said, it was a fun experience, and I kind of, playing through it initially, I was kind of to the point where I was like, I'm just going to check out of this. I streamed it on Twitter, and I'd say at like the 1.5 hour mark, I was like, well, I got the gist of this. But I had gotten so close to the end, I was just about to get the third dagger fragment. I'm like, all right, let's just like see this through, and then it wrapped up and it was done. I appreciate some of the crazy art direction they took with this game. Vaas is clearly a very, very messed up individual, as you're seeing here in this little sequence where he is kind of going through these weird flashbacks in his life with all these weird markings on the wall. When you're out in the open world, you'll find some weird visuals like sharks flying around, or rain that is actually blood, or the ocean is actually blood. This guy definitely had some major screws loose. So I have to give the Ubisoft team credit in the sense that the name of the game being Insanity, it definitely felt like you were playing with a crazy person. And there were quite a few moments in this game where Vaas breaks that fourth wall and he talks directly to you. He comments on other things in other video games. He comments on knowing that he's in a video game, that this is just his punishment for doing the same thing over and over. So you get some of these really, really cool moments where it kind of breaks from the genre and it mixes things up just a little bit. But once you kind of get the gist of what you're doing and you kind of get the idea behind that, this is just not going to give you tons of new, like, original content. It's just going to be more like background of what Vaas is and was. You may not want to continue on with the other DLCs, or if you've played the other ones, like if Pagan Min is your favorite villain, you may not want to play through with Vaas because it's probably going to be very, very similar. But I think I'll give them all a chance. I don't know if I'm going to play them all back to back, and I don't think I'll be reviewing the other two. But if you're looking for something different in the Far Cry universe, and you're looking for a fun experimentation of kind of what roguelike could be in this world, I think they got it right in the most basic sense. So that intrigues me to see kind of what will happen next if Ubisoft does continue down this road, or if we just get more of kind of the same. Because let's face it, the reviews for Far Cry 6 were very lackluster, and a lot of the gameplay mechanics and kind of the feel of the game didn't really push the envelope in the way that we wanted it to. But thankfully, at least in this DLC, they kind of got some of that right. So those are my thoughts on the Insanity DLC for Far Cry 6. If you did play it, sound off in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. The last thing I'll say as I wrap up this video, I never unlocked gadgets. So like the wingsuit or the grapple hook or whatever, I never actually got those. So I don't know if I like mainlined the game too fast or too hard. They just never seemed to be an opportunity to present itself for me to unlock those things. I probably would have had a little more fun zipping around with the wingsuit instead of running from edge to edge of the map. So your mileage will absolutely vary, but I guess that's the joy of roguelikes, right? No two sessions are the same. Your build may have been totally different than my build, and your gameplay may have been wildly different than mine. So I want to hear from all of you guys in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.